John Hope Bryant is the founder, chairman, and CEO of Operation Hope. He's been named an American Banker Magazine Innovator of the Year, one of Time Magazine's 50 Leaders for the Future. And he's advised the last 3 sitting presidents. We'll have to see if he gets into this new one, specifically in areas around financial inclusion and economic empowerment. John Hope Bryant, it has been years, my friend. It's very, very good to see you again. We have history from over decades, and so congratulations to you. I want to say personally on all that you've achieved, to help open this door. But as we talk today about bringing more people, into the financial sandbox, they've been excluded, left outside. What are the most important dimensions of this to you right now? Oh, we've got you on mute, John.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for all you've done over the last couple of decades to bring light to this topic since the Rodney King riots of 1992, you and the Hill. We are living in a moment in history right now. History doesn't feel historic when you're sitting in it. It just feels like another day, but that doesn't mean the moment is not in fact historic. And we are looking at social justice now through an economic lens, really. You're going to achieve social justice through an economic lens. If you looked at what's going on 4 years ago plus that happened to the ballot box, there was a riot of frustration. You looked at what happened January 6th, a riot of frustration, a frustrated aspiration. You look at what happened with urban communities, the protesting, some rioting, which I don't endorse, by the way, a riot of frustration. These are voices of the unseen and the unheard, and we're speaking the language of money, really, but we're not talking about it. The color today is not black or white, or red or blue. It's green, as in the color of U.S. currency. And there's just not enough of it to go around. And when we do distribute it, it's not an investment. I mean, we're not thinking through this properly. By the way, 100% of all the in-neighborhood shootings in the last 5 years, and George Floyd in particular, by police officers of African Americans, were in 500 credit score neighborhoods. It's 100% of those neighborhoods. And all of the problems that we're facing are in really sub 650 credit score neighborhoods. We see a check casher next to a payday loan lender, next to a rent-to-own store, next to a title lender, next to a liquor store, and a church down the street trying to make you feel a little bit better about your problems. And the reality is that this is not an urban black and brown problem, because what I just described to you is also happening in rural white America. So how do we solve this? We need to target 700 credit score neighborhoods. We need to have a goal of 700 credit score neighborhoods, because 700 credit score neighborhoods don't riot. They go shopping. They raise their family. They start businesses.
I've never quite heard it that way. That's a very powerful way to do it. I haven't seen the map that kind of looks at those credit scoring areas. But as we talk today, FICO is supporting today, but as we talk about credit scoring, I think there are 2 dimensions to it, right? There's one, which I find very interesting, of, promoting literacy so that people get an early understanding of what the tracks are to, a better credit standing. That's one dimension. Another dimension is, okay, what cards are stacked unfairly that need to be open? What are the other ways to read people's credit profiles, or what should be? So I just ask you, what would be the things that you would do? We're talking today about, rent, cell phone, other sort of payment behaviors that are out there. Do you think that's a good step forward? What would you add?
Yes, this is a radical movement of common sense. I talked to the CEO, Will, of FICO recently. I believe that he's on the right track with what he's talking about. And by the way, you can map this entire country and its aspiration and opportunity and problems by credit score. The poorest state in America is the lowest credit score state in America, which is Mississippi. And the opposite is also true. I would do alternative data, which you have mentioned on your program. Copies of rent statements, phone bills, utility bills. These are ways in underserved neighborhoods of showing that you're credit worthy. If you're paying your mobile phone bill, that's a form of credit. You're paying auto insurance. This is an interesting one. You don't get a one bill from your auto insurance carrier where you pay, most people, one time a year. It's put into monthly payments or quarterly payments. That is effectively a term financing agreement. My guess is insurance companies are taking all these premium payments. They're selling it off to a finance, or they're securitizing it probably on Wall Street. and so you're part of a financing instrument. Well, shouldn't the average everyday human being with too much a month at the end of their money, who should get credit for everything they do? The average single parent household run by a woman needs a Nobel Peace Prize for running a family where she's living from paycheck to paycheck successfully. Shouldn't they get credit for that? Shouldn't they get credit for the auto loan, the auto loan insurance bill that they're paying, or the home insurance bill that they're paying? These are some easy ones. Here's another one. We find out at Hope Inside that 95% of people who come to us, and by the way, 41% of all African Americans have a credit score below 620, which means that almost half of Black folks are locked out of the free enterprise system, no matter how brilliant you are, because we didn't finish the work of the Freedmen's Bank of 1865, which was chartered by Lincoln to teach free slaves about money. But what we found at Hope Inside, when we coach and counsel people, is that 95% of folks have an error on their credit report. So if you're financially illiterate, it's what you don't know that you don't know. You're not checking your credit. You don't know there's an error. When they don't know the law states, you write a letter to the 3 credit bureaus. If they can't confirm that's yours, as you know, they must remove it. Well, that pops your credit score 30 points. So if you're 590, you're now 620. That puts you in the game. Change your whole life. Change your self-esteem, your confidence, your optionality. So I think massive financial literacy for all, part of my new Marshall Plan. We need to have need a K through college education, financial literacy education as a baseline. Financial coaching for adult families, and innovations, many of the things you talked about today.
Well, I really love that package of things, John. You and I have known each other a long time. I think part of the question is, show and tell, and how do you, disrupt people's, frame of, most of us run by inertia, right? But how do you wake them up? And I know you do that. I know that you're working, John, on the 1 Million Black Business and Entrepreneur Initiative. Sounds so interesting to me. I should say on this show, For the Hill, whether it was during government shutdowns or whatever, I've always looked for people who scrambled and innovated and kind of ran. One of my favorite is Furlough Cheesecake. These two happen to be Black women who were laid off in government, went out to create a business, and they tell their whole story of how hard it was to get money in the door, whatever. Now they're kind of literally booming. So there are good stories out there, but not everyone is good. I guess my question to you is, with your entrepreneur initiative, what do you need? Where's it going?
Yeah, so this is this really speaks to operationalizing financial literacy in the way in which you've been sort of asking that question during your whole program. How do we go from PhD to PhD 2? And what people need is a way to, they need an aspirational opportunity to make financial literacy real. Otherwise it'll put folks to sleep. Wanting to buy a home, start a business. These things are what we're doing in bank branches to get the banks out of the no business and back into the yes business by coming to that point of decision making where the bank may have to turn somebody down, and we step in, give them financial coaching, get the credit score up 54 points in 6 months, 120 points in 24 months. Nothing changes your life more than God or love than moving your credit score 120 points to make them approvable, and that pops GDP, makes the loans viable for the banks, pops GDP for the country. So likewise, now it's scaling this up. Shopify, the second largest e-commerce company in America, has decided that Black businesses is good business, and philanthropy and business should not be separated. So they made a $130 million 10-year commitment to create with us 1 million new Black businesses in America. And 96% of all Black businesses, as you know, because you're on your game, don't have an employee.
Right.
So there's no wealth creation. There's no generational wealth. This is more busyness than business. But they're smart. They're brilliant. So we give them financial coaching, financial counseling, financial literacy, credit score improvement work. Again, these are folks using their personal credit for the business enterprise, speaking to one of your points the folks made earlier, which I think I modestly disagree with, their rationale, because the personal credit and the business credit in this case is the same thing. We then give them free license with Shopify, free donated, we actually invested, free website, free storefront, free payment systems, free delivery systems. These are investments in the business. And then what people can do watching this, if you're a lawyer, you're an accountant, you're a CPA, you're an insurance rep, you're a banker, you want to help, give us 2 hours per business. Donate that time, invest that time to help these businesses gird up the inside of their operations, because in 2 years, maybe that same business you're donating to will pay you for those services because they're successful, like the one you just mentioned. And I think 1 million new Black businesses in America is social justice in this country.
John, that's terrific. We have a question from our audience from Portia. Portia?
Hi, my name is Portia Jackson, and I am a realtor here in Los Angeles, California, with Pacific Playa Realty. My question is, what is the first policy win to alleviate consumer debt or student loans that you think the Biden-Harris administration should focus on?
I'm going to cheat and give you two. Living wage for all, which is take the earned income tax credit, apply it to everybody who makes $60,000 a year or less, which cuts 80% 65% of this country. Make it a requirement. You don't have to go request it. It is embedded now. The government just sends you a bonus for working. As Wall Street gets it, Main Street would get it. It would be paid for not by businesses. It would be paid for by all Americans, which would make it an incremental cost. You wouldn't even feel it from the average American. It would raise average living wage up. It would create more GDP. You'd embed that with financial literacy for all. So now you have effectively a twofer. You got financial literacy, financial coaching, and a living wage, which raises the economic energy for everybody and reduces the tension, which is unfortunately affecting public policy making and the state of energy in this country and hopefulness for all, as I said earlier.
Also, Portia, I want to mention, not to support the Biden team, but just to say that President Biden last week, because I was on the call, has moved to suspend principal and interest payments on student loan debt until March 31st, and hopefully to encourage the cancellation for every holder of a student loan up to $10,000 in principal by September 30th. So it's just something to keep in mind, that there's a little bit of financial wiggle room there. But John, let me ask you, later in our program, we have Susie Orman coming in. I benefit from an early call with her, and it's, stuff rolling around my head. She's very, very animated in this. And one of the things she says is people, certain communities deal in cash. Like we're missing, I think what's interesting about today is we're talking about rent payments. How do we capture, the specificity of people's financial behavior, financial footprint through other means and widen the aperture? But is there some way to do that in the cash world, in the debit world, and looking at people's, side there that we ought to be looking at? Well,
you got to incentivize people to want to get into the mainstream economy. I mean, I remind folks who want to demonize drug dealers that NASCAR was created out of moonshine running, which was a cash business. They realized they couldn't keep running from the police. They had to do something legal. Well, a drug dealer is essentially an illegal and ethical entrepreneur. But they understand import, export, finance, marketing, wholesale, retail, customer service, security, territory, logistics. These are, they have a horrible business plan. It's morally unacceptable, but they're not dumb. And you think about it in all these communities across this country versus just accepting things as a status quo. You say, how much untapped GDP is there in the drug dealers who are illegal entrepreneurs and the gang organizers who are frustrated union organizers? Okay, what if we got them in? What if we went in and trained them up, going back to financial coaching, financial literacy for all, Hope Business in a Box, training for these folks so they have natural small business skills. And what we do is Hope Business in a Box academies, where for kids, we'll invest $500 if you pitch your business idea and agree to open a bank account. Mm. So this is now answering your question. Nobody wakes up and says, ooh, let me open a bank account. Ooh, I want a mortgage. Ooh, I want to pay the tax man. You've got to give people a reason for the season. And I think by giving them that $500 chance to show their skills, this is K through high school example, they pitch their idea, they get that commitment, but the money has to go into an FDIC insured bank account. And you got to get a business mentor, and you have the books and records. You have to have the accounting records. So now you're incentivizing people. I mean, you know this. Life's about rewards and penalties. So we got to incentivize people to mainstream. This is the American story we're talking about. We really need a new Marshall Plan, which is what I wrote early last year, and the Biden administration is considering right now at scale over 10 years.
Besides what you just told me, which sounds very compelling, if you were sitting down with Joe Biden instead of Steve Clemons right now, what would you tell him?
I would tell him to listen to Steve Clemons. I mean, look, the administration, to their credit, I don't want to get ahead of them. They have reached out to me several times during the transition, and even as recently as last night. I think you're going to find a really moderate, inclusive. I think you're going to find something that looks more fuchsia than more red or blue or red. I think you're going to find that this is a legacy move for the president because I don't think he wants a second term. I think he wants to make America normal again in one term with GDP growth and an economy that works for all and dignity returned for everybody. And that's going to have to be inclusive. So I would say that we got to find ways to bring everybody along. I think financial literacy for all is an easy win. Legislation that makes financial literacy a requirement, K through college, is an easy win for everybody. I think a living wage for all is easy. I think, here's one, internships and apprenticeships at scale. Give corporations, where 90% of all jobs come from, a tax benefit to bring on millions of young people and give them a reason to graduate from high school, go to college if you like, but that's not a requirement, to get an internship into corporate America, community, faith, or government, giving them let's repair the ladder. That's what I would say. It's not complicated, but it has to be a 10-year commitment. It has to be scaled, and it has to be about free enterprise working for all of God's children. But I think he knows most of this already.
Well, John Hope Bryant, founder and chairman and CEO of Operation Hope, good friend. I've always said, you are. Part of what makes me uncomfortable in this conversation is that all your provocations make so much common sense. I mean, I think that's the interesting moment. It's just common sense. Why don't we do it? So I hope we do. And thank you so much for joining us today, John.
Honor. God bless you. Thanks for what you do.